When you think of borders, you probably imagine some guy standing with a clipboard checking if you have all the proper documents. And while border disputes are occasionally deadly, they don't usually come with quite so much violence. One of the most infamous border disputes in the world is the battle for Kashmir. This narrow sliver of land sits between two nuclear-armed rivals who can't agree on who should control it. To make matters worse, another country wants it too. So why do these three neighbors keep fighting over this one piece of land? And why does it matter so much? We made a video about Kashmir a while back, but we received so many great questions from you guys that we decided to tackle this topic again. Back to the map. To understand why the Kashmir conflict keeps flaring up, it helps to understand what Kashmir actually is. We covered it in depth in our previous episode, but basically it's a mountainous region divided roughly in half between Indian and Pakistani-controlled territory, though the exact line of control isn't really respected by either side. Both governments administer their portions of Kashmir as their own separate states. The Indian side is called Jammu and Kashmir, and the Pakistani side is split between Azad Jammu and Kashmir and the federally administered northern areas. Finally, a small portion of Kashmir, known as Aksai Chin, is controlled by China. But despite being split into three, Kashmir is still culturally and geographically one region. Many Kashmiris identify first and foremost as Kashmiri and often refer to the entire region simply as Kashmir regardless of who is in control. It is also home to some important natural resources like water and minerals, and is located at the crossroads of South and Central Asia. That makes it geopolitically very important. It would be nice if these three neighbors could all get along, but as we mentioned, India and Pakistan are technically still at war. Since they were partitioned in 1947, the two countries have fought 3 wars and regularly clash along their border, so any disagreement over territory tends to end badly. Now the roots of the conflict go back even further than that. Kashmir has been ruled by a variety of local dynasties for centuries before being incorporated into the empires of both Britain and Russia. But the British were worried that after they left, the Soviets might try to take the region, which would give them access to warmer waters and put India firmly in the Soviet sphere of influence. So before independence, they agreed to sell Kashmiris the right to self-determination, meaning that when they left, Kashmir would be able to choose for itself whether it wanted to join India or Pakistan or remain independent. And that's exactly what happened. When the British left in 1947, the Hindu ruler of Kashmir didn't join either side, but Pakistan had other plans. They sent in soldiers who promptly kicked the guy out and put their own leader in charge. India was furious and immediately launched an attack to kick the Pakistanis out. In the end, both sides had to agree to a ceasefire and the world got the weird and arbitrary border that we know today. But while the fighting ended, it wasn't because either side had won. The result was a mess. Thousands of people had been killed and millions more had to leave their homes. To this day, there are regular clashes along the line of control and no one has ever agreed on where it actually goes. Because of this, the Indian and Pakistani militaries have built a massive amount of infrastructure along the border, including defensive fortifications, observation towers, and checkpoints. Any building within 5 kilometers of the line is prohibited from being occupied. The border dispute is now complicated by the fact that both countries have nuclear weapons. That means if the fighting were to intensify, we'd be looking at a nuclear exchange. There are currently an estimated 800,000 to 1 million troops stationed along the line, making it the most heavily guarded border in the world. What makes things even weirder is that neither side admits that the border is a problem. India doesn't even consider the line of control to be a border. They call it an administrative boundary, and Pakistan claims that the only real border is the one set out in the UN resolution. No wonder this thing hasn't been solved yet. The situation becomes even more bizarre when you add China to the mix. In the early 1960s, Chinese and Indian forces clashed over a remote area of Kashmir called Aksai Chin. Unlike the rest of the region, which has a significant Muslim population, Aksai Chin is predominantly ethnic Han Chinese and Tibetan, so China claimed it as part of their Xinjiang province. The two fought a brief border war over it in 1962, and since then, China has used its proximity to build a highway that allows them to resupply their troops in Ladakh in the event of another conflict. The Kashmir conflict is often referred to as the third most dangerous border dispute in the world, sandwiched between the Israel-Palestine border and the Korean peninsula, and for good reason. These three neighbors will never agree on how to divide Kashmir, and any attempt to force a solution could result in war. That's especially true considering that Kashmir has become such a potent symbol of national identity for all three countries. For India, Kashmir is critical to their sovereignty. If they lose Kashmir to Pakistan or China, it would undermine the legitimacy of their government, and potentially inspire separatist movements in other parts of the country. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi once said, if India loses even an inch of Kashmir, it will be seen as the loss of the entire country. For Pakistan, Kashmir is critical to their national identity. After all, their name literally means the land of the pure. Ever since their founding, Pakistanis have defined themselves in opposition to India. Losing Kashmir would be losing a piece of their soul, and China sees Kashmir as a vital part of their claim to Central Asia. Over the past decade, they've invested billions of dollars into developing the region's infrastructure, including roads, rail lines, and pipelines. They also plan to connect Kashmir to the rest of their network through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a series of infrastructure projects linking the two countries together. From China's perspective, controlling Kashmir would help complete their dream of becoming a Central Asian power. The stakes couldn't be higher, which is why the border dispute continues to dominate diplomacy in South Asia. India and Pakistan meet regularly to discuss Kashmir, though they disagree on everything except the fact that they should probably talk more. Senior leaders have met dozens of times in the hopes of solving the problem peacefully, but those negotiations are going nowhere fast, and meanwhile, China is increasing the pressure. In recent years, they've begun diverting water away from India by building dams on the upper reaches of the Indus River. Some reports suggest that this is deliberate, while others say it's just a coincidence. Either way, it's not helping. This whole situation is creating a lot of problems for the region. The fighting along the line is causing millions of civilian casualties and driving people out of their homes, and the geopolitical tension is making it difficult to address other major issues like climate change. There have even been terrorist attacks targeting civilians on both sides of the border. Perhaps the best hope for peace is the Belt and Road Initiative. By encouraging cooperation along the route, China may be able to mediate a deal between India and Pakistan. It's unlikely, but if anyone can do it, it's them. So why do these three neighbors keep fighting over Kashmir? Well, let's be honest, it's not really a question of why, but a question of how. They want Kashmir for different reasons, but all three see it as essential to their security and sovereignty. That makes compromise very difficult. But there's another important question that we haven't answered yet. Why should we care? Well, because the fate of Kashmir affects all of us. The conflict is a constant threat to regional stability and has the potential to spark a devastating war. But it's also a microcosm of the larger struggle between globalization and nationalism. India and Pakistan are victims of their own success. As they grow economically, they're also growing as political entities. That means that questions of sovereignty and identity are becoming more important, not less. In a world where everyone is interconnected and interdependent, this conflict reminds us that globalization is ultimately a political project, not a technical one. We must find ways to bridge divides and build common interests or risk seeing the world descend into chaos. Thank you for watching.